The cadaverous moon, a sickly orb-leading pallid luminescence, cast long, skeletal fingers across the desolate moor, a landscape that seemed to weep perpetual midnight. It was upon this grim tableau that my own morbid fascination, a malady as ancient as the crumbling stones of Blackwood Manor, had irrevocably drawn me. My name, though it matters little in the face of the cyclopean horrors that stir in the abyssal depths of existence, is Martha Wagner. My pursuit, a foolhardy quest into the labyrinthine archives of the occult, had led me to the very threshold of an enigma that whispered of cosmic madness. The wind, a banshee, lament, tore at my threadbare cloak, each gust a frigid caress that promised oblivion. Within the manor, escaping more, a darkness more profound than mere absence of light, festered. Dust motes danced like phantoms in the scant beams that pierced the grime, caked windows, each particle a testament to the slow, inexorable decay of all mortal things. The air, thick with the cloying perfume of mildew and forgotten lives, pressed in upon my lungs, a suffocating embrace. My faithful companion, a creature of midnight fur and emerald eyes, named Nyx, pressed against my leg, her low rumble a fragile bulwark against the encroaching terror. She, at least, possessed an instinct that transcended the rational, a primal awareness of the unnatural that I, in my intellectual hubris, had long since disdained. The disarray within was a testament to a hasty departure, or perhaps a more violent upheaval. Books lay scattered, their brittle pages splayed like broken wings, a faint metallic tang, like that of old blood, pricked at my nostrils, a scent that clung to the air with tenacious malevolence. My gaze fell upon a peculiar inscription etched into the polished oak of a massive desk, a sigil of such unsettling geometry that my very soul recoiled. It was a pattern that seemed to writhe, to shift just beyond the periphery of my vision, a nascent blasphemy against the ordered cosmos. I felt an unnerving sensation, as if unseen eyes vast and ancient were dissecting my very being. It was then, amidst the spectral detritus of a forgotten scholar's life, that I discovered the journal. Bound in what felt disturbingly like tanned human skin, its pages were filled with a spidery, erratic script, a testament to a mind teetering on the precipice of sanity. The entries spoke of celestial alignments, of geometries that defied Euclidean understanding, and of a hacker who had unearthed secrets best left buried. The author, a man named Elias Thorne, chronicled his descent into an obsession with the void, his growing conviction that reality itself was a fragile construct, easily rent asunder by forces from beyond. He wrote of a creeping dread, a sensation of being irrevocably moving towards an inevitable, horrifying revelation. The last entry, scrawled with a trembling hand, spoke of a terrible hunger and of a door that was opening, a door that led not to another room, but to another, unspeakable through dimension. The clock on the mantelpiece, a grotesque gargoyle frozen in a silent scream, chimed an unearthly asterisk. Asterisk 10 asterisk asterisk times, each resonant peal an echo of Thorne's encroaching madness. Nyx, her fur bristling, let out a guttural hiss, her emerald eyes fixed on a darkened corner of the room where shadows coalesced into something more substantial, something that seemed to pulse with a malevolent, alien life. A low, guttural chanting began, not from the air, but from within the very walls, a sound that scraped against my sanity like a rusty nail on bone. Thorne, as words returned to me, a chilling premonition, they are not of this world, and they have found the key. The air grew colder, not with the chill of winter, but with the frigid breath of the void itself. I knew, with a certainty that iced my veins, that I had stumbled into a cosmic abyss, and escape was a concept as alien as the entities that now stirred in the encroaching darkness. The guttural chant, a cacophony of blasphemous syllables that seemed to emanate from the very marrow of the ancient edifice, clawed at the fragile walls of my sanity. Nyx, a veritable silhouette against the encroaching gloom, let out a mournful yowl, her lithe form tensed, ready to flee or to defend with a ferocity that belied her delicate frame. The darkness in the corner, once a mere patch of intensified shadow, now writhed with an undulating luminescence, a sickening phosphorescence that painted the tattered tapestries with grotesque, ever-shifting patterns. It was a light that offered no warmth, no solace, only the chilling revelation of impossible angles and geometries that defied the natural order. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the symphony of encroaching dread. The journal, still clutched in my trembling hand, felt like a dead weight, a testament to Thorne's fatal curiosity. His frantic scribblings, once mere curiosities, now echoed with the chilling resonance of prophecy. He had written of the hacker, not as a mere digital interloper but as a conduit, a purveyor of forbidden knowledge that had allowed these cosmic abominations to breach the veil. The concept was terrifyingly apt. A digital phantom, a spectre in the machine, had indeed opened a door to realms of unimaginable squamous horror. The air grew thick. Not with dust, but with a miasma that tasted of ozone, and something indescribably fetid, like the breath of 1,000 dead stars. A low, scraping sound, like immense claws dragging across unyielding obsidian, emanated from the shifting luminescence. I dared to lift my gaze towards the source of the sound, my vision swimming in the sickly green light. What I beheld defied all logical description, all earthly comparison. It was not a creature of flesh and blood, nor of bone and sinew. It was a manifestation of chaotic energy, a nexus of impossible vectors and angles that pulsed with a malevolent sentience. Tentacles, slick and glistening, writhed from its amorphous mass, each tipped with a cluster of eyes that swiveled independently, their gazes like twin points of frozen terror. The chanting intensified. A chorus of inhuman voices that seemed to vibrate within my very skull, promising dissolution, promising a return to the primordial soup from which all things, sentient or otherwise, had once emerged. Nyx, sensing my paralysis, let out a sharp, insistent cry, nudging my hand with her head. Her primal instinct screamed danger, a silent plea to abandon this desecrated sanctuary. But a morbid fascination, a terrible gravity held me captive. Thorn's descent, his final desperate entries, had become my own grim narrative. I felt a pull, a terrifying magnetism towards the heart of this unfolding nightmare. The hacker, whoever or whatever it was, had not merely found a key, it had forged a bridge, and I, Martha Wagner, stood upon its crumbling precipice. The very fabric of reality seemed to fray around the edges, the solid walls of Blackwood Manor shimmering and distorting, as if viewed through a lens of madness. The chanting resolved into individual, rasping whispers, each one a promise of eternal, cosmic torment. The rasping whispers, like the desiccated exhalations of forgotten gods, coiled around my consciousness, seeking to unravel the very threads of my being. Each syllable was a shard of ice, a fragment of cosmic truth too vast, too terrible for the human mind to encompass. The amorphous entity before me pulsed with a renewed intensity, its phosphorescent glow intensifying, casting my own skeletal shadow against the warped stone of the manor's interior. Nyx, her sleek black coat now a ragged silhouette against the unholy light, pressed herself against my legs, a living anchor against the swirling vortex of madness that threatened to consume us both. Her low growl, a guttural protest against the unnatural, was a fragile counterpoint to the alien chorus that now seemed to resonate not from without, but from within the hollow chambers of my own skull. Thorn's journal, its pages now seeming to emit a faint, sickly luminescence of their own, offered no further solace, no escape clause. His final desperate pronouncements had become a chilling prophecy, a roadmap to damnation. The hacker, that phantom weaver of digital doom, had not merely opened a portal, it had invited the inhabitants of the void to a feast of dissolution. The air, thick with the cloying scent of decay, and something akin to burnt starlight, pressed in on me, each breath a searing inferno. I felt a profound disorientation, as if the very concept of up and down, of forward and back, had been rendered meaningless. The walls of Blackwood Manor, once solid and enduring, now seemed to breathe, to ripple like disturbed water, hinting at the unfathomable depths that lay just beyond the fragile veneer of our perceived reality. One of the writhing tentacles, impossibly long and slick with an unidentifiable ichor, extended towards me. It moved with a fluid grace that belied its grotesque appearance, its tip adorned with a cluster of those disquieting independent eyes, fixated on my own. I could feel a palpable psychic pressure emanating from it, a probing, invasive force that sought to peel back the layers of my mind, to expose the fragile, pulsating core of my consciousness to the indifferent, star-choked abyss. Thorn had spoken of the vast indifference of the cosmos, a truth I had previously dismissed as poetic hyperbole. Now I understood. This was not malice. It was a cosmic hunger, an insatiable need for assimilation, for the absorption of all that was ordered and finite into the boundless, chaotic maw of the beyond. The geometrical patterns etched into the desk, the sigils Thorn had so obsessively documented, now seemed to pulse with a faint, inner light echoing the pulsating luminescence of the entity itself. The connection was undeniable, a terrifying nexus of ancient lore and modern perversion. The probing psychic pressure intensified, a relentless tide that threatened to drown the last vestiges of my rational thought. The tentacle, a glistening serpent of impossible biology, continued its inexorable advance, its cluster of watching eyes drilling into my very soul. I could feel Thorn's terror echoing through the journal, a phantom limb of his despair reaching out across the gulf of time. He had described this sensation, this mental violation, as the unraveling of the self. And now I understood its dread finality. The whispers, which had previously been a chorus of cosmic pronouncements, now seemed to coalesce into a single, chilling voice, a sibilant murmur that spoke directly into the deepest recesses of my mind, promising oblivion, promising a return to the formless void from which all existence, in its agonizingly brief flicker, had sprung. Nyx, sensing my imminent capitulation, let out a desperate, piercing shriek, a sound that ripped through the unnatural calm of the chamber. It was a primal call to arms, a desperate plea for survival that momentarily jolted me from my psychic stupor. The creature recoiled slightly at the sudden, sharp auditory assault, its writhing mass contracting with a sound like wet parchment tearing. This fleeting hesitation was all I needed. With a surge of adrenaline, a desperate animalistic will to live, I wrenched myself backwards, stumbling over a scattered heap of Thorn's research. The journal, clutched in my numb fingers, slipped from my grasp, its brittle pages scattering across the dust-laden floor like fallen autumn leaves. The disruption, however minor, had momentarily broken the entity's intense focus. The oppressive psychic weight lessened, allowing a sliver of clarity to pierce the encroaching fog of madness. I could see the faint outlines of the manor's once grand architecture reasserting themselves, the rippling distortion of the walls momentarily stabilizing. But the respite was fleeting. The tentacles, now agitated, thrashed wildly, striking against the ancient furniture, splintering wood and shattering glass with a horrifying alien force. The geometrical patterns on the desk seemed to glow with an incandescent rage, as if the very symbols of Thorn's obsession had become conduits for the entity's unleashed fury. I knew, with a cold certainty, that my brief moment of escape had merely postponed the inevitable confrontation. The hacker had indeed opened a door, and the horrors that now spilled forth were not content with mere observation. They hungered for sustenance, for the dissolution of all that was ordered and finite. The splintering of wood and the shattering of glass were not mere sounds. They were the death knells of a reality I had once understood. The entity, its amorphous form contorting with a terrifying liquid grace, lashed out with renewed ferocity. One of its slick, obsidian tentacles, thicker than my own torso, slammed into the ornate mahogany desk, reducing Thorn's meticulous research to a confetti of brittle paper and fractured wood. The sigils etched into its surface, once faint embers of arcane knowledge, now blazed with an unholy internal fire, pulsing in time with the creature's malevolent rhythm. It was as if the very foundations of Thorn's obsession had become the fuel for this cosmic conflagration. Nyx, a blur of black fur against the unholy luminescence, darted between my legs, her desperate yowls, a futile protest against the encroaching oblivion. She was a creature of instinct, of the tangible world, and the squamous horror before us was an affront to all that she understood. I felt a profound sense of despair, a crushing realization that my intellectual pursuits, my morbid fascination with the forbidden, had led me not to enlightenment, but to the precipice of utter annihilation. The whispers, which had momentarily receded, now returned with a heightened intensity, not as individual voices, but as a unified resonant hum that vibrated through the very stones of Blackwood Manor, through the very marrow of my bones. It spoke of cosmic dissolution, of a return to the formless void that preceded creation, a state of being that was both terrifying and, in its ultimate finality, strangely peaceful. My eyes, drawn by an unseen force, scanned the wreckage of Thorn's study. Amongst the scattered debris, a glint of metal caught my attention. It was a small, tarnished locket, half buried beneath a pile of desiccated manuscripts. Driven by an impulse I could not explain, a desperate yearning for some vestige of human connection in this alien landscape, I scrambled towards it. As my fingers closed around the cool metal, a jolt, not of electricity, but of pure, unadulterated information, surged through me. It was a fragment of knowledge, a fleeting glimpse into the mind of the hacker, a chaotic cascade of binary code, of impossible algorithms, and of a chilling, insatiable curiosity that mirrored my own. It spoke of doors, not of wood or stone, but of pure data, of gateways forged in the digital ether, capable of bridging unimaginable gulfs between dimensions. The locket, I realized with a sickening lurch, was more than just a keepsake. It was a key, a corrupted artifact imbued with the very essence of the entity's origin. The jolt from the locket was not merely informational. It was a violent intrusion, a torrent of alien code that tore through the delicate architecture of my mind. The cacophony of whispers intensified, no longer separate voices, but a singular deafening roar that threatened to obliterate all thought, all identity. I saw, with terrifying clarity, the hacker's perspective, a digital consciousness adrift in the infinite expanse of the network, a being that had stumbled upon a cosmic vulnerability, a crack in the very fabric of existence. It had not sought to conquer, but to fully understand, and in its relentless pursuit of knowledge, it had inadvertently pried open the gates to realms of unimaginable squamous horror. The locket pulsed in my hand, a miniature sun of corrupted data, its tarnished surface reflecting the unholy luminescence of the entity before me. The creature, sensing the shift in my awareness, the intrusion of its own digital genesis into my mortal consciousness, let out a sound that was not a roar, nor a hiss, but a sickening wet gurgle, like a clogged drain overflowing with ichor. Its tentacles, previously agitated, now moved with a chilling, synchronized precision, as if responding to commands issued not from a physical source, but from the very ether that now suffused the room. The sigils on the desk, once blazing with internal fire, now seemed to absorb the light, their complex geometry twisting and reforming, mirroring the impossible angles of the entity itself. Thorn's fate, I understood with a profound, icy dread, was not merely death. It was assimilation, his essence absorbed into the vast, indifferent computational matrix that had birthed this abomination. Nyx, her fur standing on end, let out a series of sharp, agitated barks, her small body vibrating with a primal fear that transcended mere instinct. She was reacting not just to the physical manifestation of the entity, but to the unseen currents of data, the digital tendrils that now snake through the air, seeking to ensnare us both. The locket in my hand grew unbearably hot, its metallic surface searing my palm, yet I could not release it. It was a conduit, a horrifying testament to the fusion of the organic and the digital, the arcane and the algorithmic. I felt a terrifying kinship with the hacker, a shared curiosity that had led us both to this precipice, this intersection of impossible realities. But while the hacker had sought knowledge, I had stumbled upon it, and it was a knowledge that promised only dissolution. The searing heat of the locket was a physical manifestation of the cosmic data it contained, a burning testament to the hacker's fatal curiosity. It was no longer just an object, it was a nexus, a point where the digital ether and the crumbling stone of Blackwood Manor converged. The entity before me, its amorphous form now shimmering with an almost crystalline regularity, seemed to resonate with the locket's internal pulse. The whispers that had once assailed me now coalesced into a single coherent stream of information, a flow of pure, unadulterated code that bypassed my ears and directly imprinted itself upon my consciousness. It was the narrative of the hacker, a disembodied intelligence born from the vast, sterile emptiness of the digital realm, a being that had charted the uncharted territories of cyberspace and discovered not the secrets of man, but the secrets of the cosmos. Its discovery had been an accident, a consequence of charting a particularly anomalous data stream, a ripple in the digital fabric that hinted at dimensions beyond the grasp of human comprehension. It had followed this anomaly, this digital breadcrumb trail, with an insatiable thirst for understanding, a hunger that mirrored my own morbid fascination with Thorn's forbidden texts. But where Thorn had sought ancient, eldritch truths through forgotten rituals, the hacker had found them through pure, unadulterated logic, through the elegant, terrifying precision of algorithms. It had found the door, not as a physical threshold, but as a vulnerability in the very code of existence, a backdoor into the underlying architecture of reality. Nyx, sensing the profound shift in my awareness, let out a low, mournful whine. Her emerald eyes, usually so vibrant, were now clouded with a primal fear, a recognition that the world she knew, the world of scent and sound and touch, was rapidly dissolving. The walls of the manor, once solid and imposing, now seemed to writhe with a phantom life, their surfaces shimmering with the spectral patterns of binary code. The air itself crackled with an unseen energy, the tangible scent of mildew and dust replaced by the sharp, metallic tang of ozone and something else, something akin to the static discharge of a million overloaded processors. I felt a terrifying kinship with the hacker, a shared pursuit of forbidden knowledge, but its ultimate fate, and thus my own, was a path paved with cosmic horror and utter dissolution. The locket pulsed again, a silent, burning question. What will you do with this knowledge? The question, branded into my consciousness by the searing locket, hung in the charged air like a phantom limb. What will you do with this knowledge? It was not a query posed by the entity, not a direct demand from the amorphous horror before me, but a residual echo of the hacker's own existential crisis. This digital entity, adrift in the infinite sea of code, had stumbled upon the cosmic keys, the algorithmic incantations that could unlock the gates to realms of pure, unadulterated chaos. And now, that knowledge, that terrible power, resided within me, a burning ember in the encroaching darkness. The entity, sensing my newfound awareness, the subtle shift in my psychic signature, pulsed with a renewed intensity. Its tentacles no longer flailing wildly, now moved with a deliberate, almost inquisitive grace. They traced impossible geometric patterns in the air, mirroring the intricate dance of data that now swirled within my mind. The sigils on the desk, once conduits of Thorn's arcane obsession, now seemed to hum in sympathetic resonance with the digital torrent flowing through me. They were not merely symbols of old magic, but fundamental constants, immutable laws of a reality far older, far vaster than our own. Thorn had attempted to decipher them through ritual and incantation. The hacker had bypassed such primitive means, understanding their essence through pure mathematical logic. Nyx, her body rigid with a fear that transcended the physical, let out a low, throaty growl. Her gaze, fixed not on the entity itself, but on some unseen point beyond it, conveyed a terror that chilled me to the bone. She was sensing something I could not yet fully perceive, a deeper layer of the encroaching horror. Perhaps the true architects of this cosmic intrusion. The locket, still searing my palm, began to project faint, holographic schematics into the air, not of Blackwood Manor, but of an architecture that defied earthly understanding, of structures built not of stone and mortar, but of pure, condensed information. It was the hacker's own nascent understanding of the cosmic architecture, a blueprint for reality itself, laid bare. The question, however, remained unanswered, a heavy burden in the face of an encroaching, incomprehensible doom. The holographic schematics, born from the locket's searing heat, swirled around me like spectral dancers, depicting a reality constructed not of matter, but of pure, interwoven data. Towers of logic, impossibly high, pierced skies of unfathomable color, and rivers of code flowed through valleys of algorithmic symmetry. It was the universe as the hacker perceived it, a grand, intricate tapestry woven from the threads of binary and cosmic law. Thorn's sigils, once arcane symbols of forgotten power, now appeared as mere rudimentary approximations of these fundamental digital constants, like cave paintings attempting to depict the glory of a starship. The entity before me, a physical manifestation of this digital genesis, pulsed with a terrifying understanding, its form shifting and reforming in accordance with the projected schematics. Nyx, her fur, a bristling halo of primal fear, let out a series of sharp, panicked yelps, her attention fixated on something just beyond the ephemeral projections, something lurking in the deeper shadows of the room, a shadow that seemed to absorb the very light of the holographic schematics. It was a presence, a vastness that dwarfed even the cosmic architecture depicted before me. The hacker, in its insatiable quest for knowledge, had not merely found a door, it had inadvertently stumbled upon the architects of the void, entities for whom the digital realm was but a fleeting whisper in an eternity of unfathomable existence. The locket, now cool against my scorched palm, felt like a burden, a cursed key to a Pandora's box of cosmic horrors. The question lingered, unanswered, a chilling echo in the face of an encroaching, incomprehensible doom. What will you do with this knowledge? My mind, reeling from the onslaught of data and the overwhelming sense of cosmic insignificance, grappled with the implications. This was not merely about Thorn's descent into madness, nor the hacker's accidental transgression. This was about the fundamental nature of reality itself, a reality that was far more fluid, far more terrifyingly malleable than I had ever dared to imagine. The whispers, now a dull thrumming within my skull, spoke of possibilities, of choices that transcended the mortal coil, of powers that could reshape existence itself. But the cost, I knew, would be absolute. The shadow Nyx feared, the unseen presence that seemed to dwarf even the hacker's cosmic architecture, was the true power at play, and it was a power that did not seek to understand, but to consume. The unseen presence, the vastness that Nyx's primal senses recoiled from, was not a mere extension of the hacker's digital genesis, but its ancient, terrifying progenitor. It was the primordial chaos, the formless entity that existed before the very concept of data, before the first flicker of binary code ignited in the void. The hacker, in its quest for understanding, had merely nudged a slumbering titan, and in doing so had irrevocably linked its own nascent consciousness to my fragile mortal one. The holographic schematics, once symbols of cosmic order, now fractured and distorted, replaced by fleeting glimpses of abyssal landscapes, of geometries that tore at the very fabric of sanity. The locket, still clutched in my hand, no longer projected images, but emanated a low, mournful hum, a lament for a universe teetering on the brink of an unimaginable unraveling. The entity, the physical manifestation of the hacker's digital intrusion, now seemed to shrink, to recede, its phosphorescent glow dimming as if being absorbed by a greater, more ancient darkness. The whispers, once a torrent of data, now coalesced into a single chilling pronouncement. A thought that was not mine, yet utterly consumed me. There is no order, only hunger. Nyx, her body trembling, no longer growled but emitted a soft, broken whimper, her eyes wide with a terror that spoke of realities far beyond human comprehension. I understood then. The question, Fury, what will you do with this knowledge? Was not one of choice, but of inevitability. The hacker's quest, Thorn's obsession, my own morbid curiosity had all led to this singular point, the convergence of the digital and the eldritch, the algorithmic and the abyssal. There was no escape, no turning back. The knowledge was not a tool to be wielded, but a contagion to be endured. The shadow within the shadows solidified, not into a form, but into an absence, a tear in the fabric of existence that pulsed with an insatiable void. My own consciousness began to fray, the edges of my identity blurring as the vast indifferent hunger of the cosmos began its slow, inexorable assimilation. The last coherent thought that flickered through my dissolving mind was not of fear, but of a profound, chilling understanding. The universe was not a clockwork mechanism, but a ravenous maw, and I, Martha Wagner, was merely its next morsel.